Hello, I'm Ari, and this is Shamelessly Creative. Today is update number 3 of the 365 Days Focus Art Challenge that was started by Artfully Yours with Diana. You can check out her information below. I meant for this to be a short video, but I ended up doing a demo of the colorful faces, and then towards the end I also did a demo of a practicing style I'm going to use this next week. So there's a couple demos, and so it ended up really long. I tried to edit out as much as I could so you wouldn't be here all day. Remember, these are just things I'm trying and using, and by no way are they the only ways or even the best ways. We each have to figure out our own path, but having different techniques to try and being exposed to things we may not have heard of helps us improve our skills and find what works for us. Please grab your sketchbook and your pencils and join along with me. We are working on the 365 Days Focus Challenge. Today I'm just going to sketch out some of the colorful characters. So I'm just going to talk while I sketch. I always start with the lightest color that I'm choosing in that face range. So on the first one, I'm going to start with a yellow, and then I just add in color. So I start with the lightest color, and then I add in shadows with the darkest color. And that darkest color is going to go in around the eyes, whatever side of the face that is in shadow. So I'll try to draw little arrows of where the light source is coming from. And then you just build up the darker colors on the darker side of the face, the lighter colors. You go in with the bright color like reds or yellows to brighten up an area. So if it's looking too dark, and I use really light pressure for your first few areas until you go in to do some bright highlights, you should be using really light pressure, and like that, where I have the outline. And I kind of go over and shade everything, putting only down a light layer of color. And I guess what I love about colored pencils is the layering you can do as long as you don't press down hard right away. And you can blend the colors in more or leave them a little more, like how the colored pencil has marks on it. Just leave it, those colors showing. And then I kind of just grab colors of choice. So, and I'll try to do some in several different colors, so you can just kind of watch. So again, I'm only using the smallest pack of Polychromos pencils by Faber-Castell. So it's a 12 pencil set, so that's all you need to make a range of faces. You don't need to go by the super set, but just know if you like this style, just start with the 12 set of Polychromos because they blend well, they layer well, and you usually can pick them up on sale on like Dick Blick or Jerry's Artorama for anywhere between $13 and $16, and it should last you quite a while. So I think it's a fun step into Polychromos if you've never worked with them, but you can try this with any color pencil. That's what I happen to have on hand. And remember, like I'm doing the 365 days focus challenge on faces, but you could choose anything. You could choose to do trees. You could choose to do landscapes. You can choose creatures or anime or whatever it is that inspires you. For me right now, it's faces and finding my style of faces. What the focus challenge is to focus on whatever matters to you. So see how when you start adding like deeper colors into the shadow, how that kind of pops out. Picture. You can just think about it, like maybe the light is coming from this direction, so this side is going to be a little bit more shaded. So I might go in and put deeper colors on that side. I'm in Native American medicine, we call it the mystery, and that's where I'm at. And art is about that. It's about the unknown. It's about the mystery. And you have to be willing to stay in not knowing as a part of art. Because that not knowing in Buddhist terms is the beginner's mind. It's always being a beginner, and I think that is an important thing to bring to your art is the mystery, the not knowing, and the beginner's mind. Because then when you show up on a page and are trying things, it doesn't matter that the person turns out green. It doesn't matter that all of a sudden you made big ears and maybe you like that. Because each of those moments helps bring I guess from focusing on one thing like faces, it's going to help you grow your strength and filter out all that isn't you. So on one hand, focusing is about setting a goal. I want to be better at drawing faces in 1 year. And so what am I going to do to get there? I'm going to take baby steps. And what are those baby steps? Well, it's not called baby steps. What is a small step I can take each day in a focus area? And my focus area for art is faces. So I'm going to draw a face every day. And by doing that, you start filtering out all that doesn't support those essential items to your life. I read a book, Essentialism. I'll try to stick up on the screen the author. So far, this is all I've used. But essentialism is basically that. It's taking your focus in your life, and this might be bigger, like your business plan or your family, and it's putting the essential things first in your day and in your life and filtering out what isn't important. Now, on this challenge for faces for 365 days, what does that mean? Well, for me, it means filtering out a lot of extraneous thought process. Like I know I have to draw a face a day. I know I want to focus on characters and developing my style where when you look at my stuff, it's mine. You could say Ari made that from Shamelessly Creative. That's what I want, is to develop that style. But right now I'm in the mystery. The colorful things I'm making today, that's definitely my style, or at least one of my styles. I'm working on becoming more realistic in some of my drawings. And I'll kind of go through my drawings today. I'm really enjoying that process. But just because I'm focusing on becoming more realistic in my sketchbook doesn't mean that the art I put out into the world will end up being realistic. It's staying true to what art inspires me. I like more innocent. I have two things that I kind of like. I like the innocent faces of like children's faces and peaceful faces. And then I also like creatures. Like I think on Instagram and on the January Paletful Pack video, you can see I created a Cyclops. And I kind of have this, like, I like creatures, like demon creatures and fae creatures, and of course I do February. So eventually, the more faces I do, regardless if they're in my style, they will start developing into identifiable images eventually. And maybe, I don't know. I mean, maybe if you look through my Instagram, you'll see a style that I'm not fully aware of yet. I don't have a whole lot on Instagram yet. I'm willing to stay in the mystery of and discovery of what I really like. I'm kind of in a process of figuring out how I want to focus. I may, because I'm realizing with art there are no definitive. You don't want to run off in a million directions, and yet each direction you take, when I decide to start putting different colors into these images, that was a risk. That was, and so what happens is when we take those little risks in our art, it moves us in a direction, either for the positive or negative, and neither is positive or negative. Because we can say, wow, I really don't like ink, or I really don't like watercolor. But you need to give yourself enough of a chance, because let's say you've never worked with watercolor before and you put down watercolor and you go, oh, I don't like it. You need to give yourself enough time to try a medium. And if you've done 10 or 15 or 20 watercolor paintings, you start having an idea of how the medium works. One or two, you're not really going to have a good idea of what's working and what's not, because you don't know the medium well enough to make those decisions. And I find that a lot of people do that. They jump in and try something, oh, I don't like it. But if you've only done one thing, you have to get to know your supplies. Like I know how my sketchbook works with color pencil. I don't think I've used any ink in it. yeah, mostly I've stuck to pencils. So if I start putting ink down and this paper absorbs it and then kind of spreads the ink out, that's not going to look good. And or maybe that is the effect I'm going for. I guess that's the other option. Sometimes it's your paper that causes effects that you don't want with your supplies, especially like inks and watercolors, things that absorb. Same thing though, color pencil. If your paper is really smooth, you don't get layering as well as you do on a kind of textured, like sketchbook paper or paper that's made for color pencil. So each day when you show up, and that's probably the hardest part of art, is showing up, is setting aside the time, sitting your butt in your chair, regardless if it's in the living room or in a studio or in your office. It's having a sketchbook available. Maybe you set up a little backpack or bag that has all your art supplies in it, and you leave it where you sit the most. And so while you're sitting there, you can pull it out and do some sketching. So because that's the first hurdle you have to come to is forcing yourself to actually gather a pencil and paper or paint and paper and actually sit there and go, okay, I'm going to create something. Your second obstacle is staring at a blank page and not knowing what to create. And it's being courageous to put down that first line, and that's the mystery. That's the not knowing, and being okay with seeing what comes out, what shows up on your paper, which means being okay with ugly art and bad art and color choices that may not have been the best color choices. It's experimenting and playing, because let's say you do the technique I'm doing and you hate it, or you hate working with color pencils. That informs you for tomorrow. I mean, I'd give yourself some time to work on it, but you have to give yourself enough time to really know that's not a medium you want to work in. And so I'm laying down the darker colors where the shadows will make sense. So the light's coming from this direction. Then I'm shading the blue back in this area. And her head is kind of blocking here. And have a much deeper shadow on her shirt here. When I started this, I was saying how I'm trying to decide how I want to approach this. 365 days is a long time. Do I want to break that down into weeks? So this is kind of what I'm thinking, is do I want to try a week of color pencil and a week of watercolor, where I'm giving myself enough time to focus on faces, which is my main focus, but faces in color pencil. I know I'm liking that. So that's a yes. That's moving my art into a yes direction. This is something I want to pursue long term. Now, then if I do a week or two of watercolor, what is my mind going to say? Is it going to say, wow, I'm really loving this? Then I do a week or two of ink and see where that brings me, because over time, you're really going to start. Remember when I said about filtering out what isn't you and keeping what is you. So I don't think it hurts to experiment this year. because that's what we're doing. Our focus is to find our art style that is the most us. So, who am I as an artist is found, your style is found by filtering out what isn't you. And that takes experimenting and being okay with the unknown. It takes discovery and exploration to find your style, to find what makes you happy. So, these are the only colors I used. If I already know what I'm going to do when I show up, it's not as exciting for me, I guess. And I think for artists, especially like on YouTube and Instagram, and the ones that seem to burn out are the ones that stop following their intuition, stop following what they want to create because they've developed a fan base around a style that they tried for a while. And then they find themselves not liking it and that they've outgrown it or they're changing and they want to explore something different. And then they have to then balance who they are with who they are based on their viewership. Even a year from now, when I have a style, I will still always be growing as an artist. But I think that's it. It's always filtering out what doesn't support you and support your art. That's our goal, is to focus and filter out what doesn't work for us. Filter out the mediums that we just don't wish to explore at this time. It doesn't mean that, let's say, like oils are not something I want to explore at this time. I do want to try them again someday because I feel like I didn't deeply learn enough about them to rule them in or out. But because of the mess I find oils make, it's just too much besides creating art that I want to pursue. So see how that filters that option out for me. I can just put my oils away or give them away, and I can focus on right now inks, watercolors, and color pencils. So some of that other stuff can go away and I can focus on what matters. I can simplify my workspace by focusing in on those supplies I really want to use. But it may take, let's say where I'm about a month and a half to 2 months into this challenge, and I still don't know what it is I'm going to end up loving, and I think that's exciting. I think, wow, what am I going to know about myself and my art by December by taking these steps and trying those mediums that I already love and exploring more ways to put them down and trying different ways of adding and subtracting. You know, maybe I like a more detailed style of watercolor, but that doesn't mean on the weeks that I'm really exploring watercolor that I don't try a more loose style. Because how do you know? How do you know until you experiment enough with your marks and brush strokes, which are personally yours, where you can go and what you can do with those? And I go in and start adding highlights in whatever colors I've chosen. So again, I'm just using, this is the basic 12 polychromo set, and that's all I'm using for these. So it's going in with some of this magenta. And I layer really lightly, so I'm not putting a lot of pressure on this at all. So then same thing, even though I'm starting with a darker base, putting in shadows where I think shadows would be, and some highlights. The lighter and darker colors. So this week, what I'd like you to do is show up for yourself and your art. Make just a small commitment this week. You know, you don't have to commit. We commit day by day, whether in our relationships or our art practice, our writing practice, learning a language, learning an instrument. Every day we recommit to something. So if you're not doing that in your relationships, whether they're friendships or a romance or a marriage, relationships with your kids, if you're not recommitting every day to make that relationship the best relationship, you're not putting the essential things first. And sometimes you have to revisit that. And it's no different. Your relationship with your art and yourself, same thing, is when we don't do self-care, and especially in times like this, if you don't recommit to yourself every day and what matters to you, you get lost. You get lost in who you are, what your art style is. If you're not doing self-care, if you put everybody else first, you're going to wake up 20 years from now and realize that your life has been spent on other people. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because I've done it. What I'm saying is that loving ourselves, loving our art, loving the people around us is every day just choosing to say, I appreciate this relationship and I'm going to work hard to make sure that person knows I love them and I care about them. I'm going to show up on the page of my sketchbook, of my journal, of my online blog, and I'm going to show up as me. I'm going to focus on those things that matter to me. And so when I say, change your art, change your life, focus on your art, focus on your life, that's what I'm saying, is by showing up in my sketchbook every day, that's me. That's a piece of me that has been there since I was a little girl. And it's been gnawing at me my whole life, and I ignored it for so long that it really makes me sad that there was this person in there that wanted to be doing this exact thing every day of those 20 years. And I let family and commitments and work and other things pull me away from myself. There's that saying, if everybody in the world would do what they love, the world would be taken care of. We would all be happier. We would all be focused on things that bring us even more energy and more light. But like I have several degrees in science and computers, and I did get a writing degree as well, and those, but I went back for my writing. Writing and art was something that growing up I was told, you're not going to make any money at that. Go into something or diversify, or all the wonderful things that parents tell you, that you can't make any money at that. You can't, that's not a real career. And I let those voices, and then it's like, oh, you can't be doing art right now. You need to focus on your family. You need to focus on raising the kids. And, it's like you're putting too much time into yourself or your interests. It's like all of those voices show up when we sit our butt down to create. And those are the voices we have to hush and remember our focus. The focus of my days. My days are limited on this earth. So by focusing on the things I love, which is my husband, my children, my art, my home, my extended family, and my friends. Like, those are the most important things. And if every day I wake up and I say, my family, my art, and my friends, how am I going to make that circle stronger? The things that matter to me, how am I going to focus if I'm running around doing things for things that aren't essential? I mean, I really loved that Essentialism book. It really helped me define what is essential. And for me, art is essential. It's who I am, and a part of me I ignored for way too long. If that sounds and resonates with you, that we can work on that together, about that focus and making our art a priority, even if it's for a few minutes a day. I know life gets busy. Life has twists and turns, and we are seeing that this year. But if every day, even during those twists and turns, you have a safe place in your art to turn to, that you've focused on your relationships, then in those crazy moments, you have strength, because you know what my essential things in my life are also the most soothing. It's the people I want to turn to in tough times. My art book is what I want to turn to in tough times. And those fill us up and kind of push the tough, hard things a little further out of our bubble and give us room to breathe. So again, I'm going to start with the yellow base. As I said, the two things I'm going to try either this week or in the near future, I'm going to stop giving myself such deadlines, because I really love everything and I want to try everything. And again, like, I was going to do journaling on this channel, but that's starting to move me away unless I decide to do that as a personal thing and I videotape that. I probably won't be doing that, because that again is focusing elsewhere other than what I'm trying to create this year. I'm trying to create my characters, my style, what makes me happy visually in my art. So, you probably won't see a lot of videos on journaling for a while, because I'm choosing the essential things, which is the space challenge, which will also include sculpting. That's going to hopefully start showing up on this channel too, because that's part of that focus, the faces. But I'm going to keep an art journal, so a written art journal, but I want to put in this journal ideas and thoughts. So it's going to be a written journal as much as making sketches in it. You know, so I want to try things out, observe, make notes, put color ideas, color combinations I love, make marks with my ink pens, and try things. Like it's a little space that I don't have to commit to anybody else, and just put down where I'm going, what I'm liking, so today is Tuesday, what color combinations speak to me today, and I put that in there. It's like, oh, I'm really loving orange and teal. And because think about a year from now, going through that journal and seeing what colors, what ideas motivated you. Because as I said, I hope we evolve. I hope that we don't just stay with the same faces on our paper day after day, year after year. You know, I mean, I expect for a year or two to focus in on something, but I hope that then I evolve to the next phase of my art. So keeping a small art journal is going to allow me some play space to make marks, to just play and do color mixing and trying new color combinations and new lines. So this one, 2 colors. So far, all of these. You know, having things not work out teaches us more about our art supplies and how we work, and that's okay. Like, that's awesome. Like, having time to that we mess up teaches us so much if we can step away from it. I learned from this today. Well, I learned that this ink does not work on this paper. I learned that I can't use these pencils on wet paper because it just stains. I learned that in this face I made the chin too long. In my journal, what I just said, like, her face isn't long enough right here, and it should have been moved back a little bit. So whether it was because I was working up against another sketch that I did that, I don't know. But some of the proportions are off. But I like the texture in her hair because she had braids and I really liked what I did there. So yes, I can see what didn't work here, but I also, there's things I like. And that's what I want you to do this week, is look at what you do. If you don't like it, like this one I don't like either. The neck was too dark, the face is too outlined, the chin is too wide. But what I can do, I think that was pencil, is I also can come in my journal and start changing things. So just because you finished a page doesn't mean, so what did I say? I didn't like that it was too outlined. But how do I like it if I move her chin in? Does that feel better? Yeah, I like that better. You know, so play over, you know, go back to something you don't like and work on it some more. So these are my faces for this week. Same thing here. You know, she ended up like with a very round, kind of squatty face. Assess your art. Like, what do you like about that picture? What don't you like about that picture? Like, I really like this one this week. This is probably my favorite. She's my second favorite. I like things about this one. This one. This one looks, it was supposed to be a girl, but maybe this chin made it too masculine. The wrinkles made it, it's very intense face, but there's still something I like about it. But something I don't like, if I keep working in layers, I probably can make this one look better. Maybe not, you know, sometimes you can't. But it's just taking the time to say, well, you know, adjust something here that makes it make more sense. Because maybe I just didn't, this was my first one that day, and maybe I just didn't give it enough time, and maybe I'm going to make it worse. But we really don't know until we go in there again and try. So, you can always work on reworking something. Those are my faces last week. These are my faces this week. I wasn't prolific. I didn't really do anything outside of this sketchbook this week. But I have 11 new faces. So next week, hopefully I'll fill out the rest of this. Her, I really like this ear. That's what I want you to do. I don't like much about her, but I really like how this ear turned out. I'm working on ears. And so each one that I do, because I was hiding them behind hair before, because I just didn't get how to make it look ear-like. And I'm still struggling with that. I'm struggling with fabric lines. But the only way to improve on that, and that's what I find too, if I start going in on images, I will end up continuing to add more color and maybe overwork an area. But just know that you can go back over and say what you don't like and see if you can just adjust it a little bit. Of course, the shading on this neck now is not, but do I like the shape of her face better? Yes. So if I just had that and the hair and the neck were better proportioned, I'd be pretty happy with that. So these are the faces this week. Not a lot. I'm improving. And even if you go on my Instagram and you just see the difference in the last few month or two, as I just really have started to focus, my art is improving. I have some background in art, but not a lot. I knew I could draw, but my viewers probably didn't know I could draw. Something different I did this week too was I just started drawing in my living room. So this video is all done in my living room with me relaxing in my studio trying to make a video. I'm stepping away from that a little bit because there's a certain amount of pressure to do things right when you're doing it for video instead of just recording what I'm doing naturally. I think my results are better when I'm more relaxed. When I'm stressed, then I draw, these were all done for camera. I worry about time, and then I just relaxed and did these without really worrying about it. And they're better. That was the start. The art snacks, that's when you can see the change. I thought, I'm going to do the portrait challenge. I'm just going to sketch out a portrait. That's the moment I realized I hadn't fully lost my skills. My old creative self was still inside, and I just had to slow down and focus. That was the moment when I created her. And then the next week, because it was a once a week thing, these were the characters we did. And again, I was like, yeah, I can draw. My cartoon characters, my very simplistic ones, are a part of me. That's my rushed, simple style. That's what when I would draw the kids' notes, though, that was the little faces and things I put on, their lunchbox notes or whatever. My simple style, that's what that's for. It was those quick little sketches. When I'm rushed and I feel like I have to get a video out, I kind of revert back to that very simple style just to get it done. These take me about 20 to 25 minutes to do these sketches. So just so you have a time reference, and then but I'm focused. I'm not focused on the clock. I'm focused on the reference face I'm looking at. And from that moment, then this is what's happened. There's more and more faces that I'm proud of, that I'm so happy that I have this journal that documents the process of the last 6 months. I mean, this is my first #1 sketchbook since I started. And you have to start somewhere. And, it's just focusing and improving. I hope that this video inspires you to start your own focus. What's great about this focus is in 365 days, when this year is over, my focus on faces, maybe I'm going to focus on trees or landscapes or flowers. And then I'm going to do that. And maybe the third year, you're going to see these faces or faces like these with florals or with trees. Is over time, all of our focus areas, and maybe you don't even have to focus for a year, but I'm doing it for the mystery, for the unknown of what can grow from this focus? What's going to improve in my art? What medium am I going to just fall in love with by Christmas time? I don't know. Right now I'm really loving color pencil. It is, which is so weird. Expect to like pencil and color pencil as much as I do. The biggest thing is showing up on the page, showing up for yourself and what matters to you. Because I'm assuming if you're watching this video, there's a part of you that really wants to create if you're not creating now, because otherwise you really wouldn't be interested in art videos. I'm speaking to you and you're not drawing because you feel like you can't. These are bad. It's not, but I have to make some bad things to make some good things. And it doesn't take that long. It just requires focus. Your focus may not be faces. It's just starting. It's just showing up on the page and not being afraid to make these lines and go, at the end of the day, I don't like that. But wow, look at, this was the last one I did that day. And I really love her. Like, I do. I also, there's something about this one I really like. But I had to make her to practice face proportions to move me to the next one and to the next one. Having that hour or so under my belt helped lead me to creating this one. Someday, I hope that this is what comes out first. That if your first one out of the gate could look like this rather than this, that would be awesome. I don't know if that's possible. Maybe this will always be my start or something incredibly worse. The two things I'm going to focus on this week are starting an art journal that's specific for what I'm learning about my art to track that process. I'm going to write that down so I don't forget where I'm going. The second thing I'm going to try is smaller pictures. So these are quite large and these are quite small. Think about the time it takes to create a 2-inch face compared to a 10-inch face. To get the shading right on a 10-inch face is going to take you a lot of time. But if you practice your faces in small little drawings, you can, where do I want the eyes? I want those here. So I just drew him in seconds and I have an idea of a face. And I could say, oh, I put the ears way too high. So I'm going to draw him again. And then I remember that, like where the jaw meets, that's where I'm going to put the ears. And his eyebrow should be kind of at the top of the ears. So I'm going to give him open eyes. So in less than a minute, I've done 2 faces. And what did I learn between these? That's the other thing I'm going to focus on this week, is either doing a grid on my page or just repetitive sketches. But so what do I like about this one? Because part of art and improvement is assessing what works and what doesn't. I'm kind of happy with him. He's kind of cute. But see, I can notice that the ear was not placed right. I can add more detail, but then I can do them again. See, because here I think his chin is too steep. So we know the ear is at the top of the jaw. Maybe I don't want to see so much of the ear. So in the time it takes to create these 3, maybe it's the same, it's like only outlining this face in one color. This is where thumbnails for larger pictures come in, and just practice. And here, I still don't like the chin, so I can come in again and see even the angle of the face is changing. Each time you can just reassess what do I like? Well, his eyes, I don't like his eyes. Ear is a little too big for his head. So then I come in and do a littler ear. Oh, I like that better. And one of these faces counts, but in 5 minutes, I can play with proportions and keep changing things. What do I like about what don't I like about it? And try it again and try it again. And so that's one thing you might see next week is this progression of angles. Maybe it's just quick sketches of what does it look like. See, I don't even know. But if a face is, see, I need to play with this. So if somebody has their head tipped back, what does that look like? And for a first one, that's not bad. But then I go, well, this chin is too steep and too defined. How can I change that? Let me see more of the underneath of their nose. But see, now he's kind of looking, it's not up. So this is bad. It's just bad. But what am I learning? I'm learning, okay, maybe my angle isn't right. See, and now that face is going to be really flat. See? So as I progress, this first one was actually probably the best out of those three. But so now just keep assessing and changing and assessing and changing. And once you've done it several times, go back and find a reference. And then, but don't look at the reference first. Just figure it out for yourself. What works, what doesn't. Go back over things. This one wasn't as bad as I thought it was. It's not great, but it's, like what will help this one look more realistic? Like that's what I'm saying is maybe your first try wasn't as bad as you thought. But if you get the images down, you can then sit and play with them too. Like I'm not sure what's wrong with this one, but let's give him a chin here. I don't know. This one's just all sorts of wrong. But again, it's like the more you do the same thing repetitively, the more you're training your brain to figure out what's wrong. And you're self-correcting and self-correcting and self-correcting. And if it still just doesn't look right, then get out a reference. But that's what you get when you just sit and play, is you just, like, even if it's just your circle and you figure out where your lines are for your face. I think the nicest way to make eyes is just like have them closed to begin with. Like, look what you figured out just with that. Yeah, it doesn't look like anything. So minutes. not hours, not now you have, and you just keep making circles and keep making lines and say, well, what does that look like? I'm not saying it's always going to be great, because it's not. It's just experimenting with angles and faces, and I mean, you might have a page of just putting in lines. Does that look right? Does that look right? I want my person to look up. Where would their ear be? Maybe this is all you do for a while, is just make the circles. Another thing I do, which I don't see people do a lot, is more of a tin, I call it a tin can. Gives me, I'm able to see this as a head, and now I just need to add, like, well, he's looking down, so his eyes are going to be here, his nose is going to come here. So that's not very good. I haven't been doing this as often, but it kind of gives me an idea for the hair. It kind of delineates for me where things need to go, and I like it better than this. More sense to me, because our bodies are, if you look at, if you think about the body being layers of cylinders, cans stacked up on cans, what does that look like? That's why when I was starting out, I just always used, I call it the tin can method. This is just framing out what works, and building on that. Still doesn't mean things are going to turn out the way you want them to, but there you go. I hope there was something useful in that for you. This is my 365 days focus challenge, started by Artfully Yours with Diana. Her links are below. Some people have dropped out. If you want to be included in the list of videos that are working on this challenge, contact Artfully Yours with Diana on Instagram or her YouTube. But if you just want to follow along and do it in your own mind, that's okay too. I'm really enjoying this focus, and I'm trying to make it the best I can for myself. So as I said, this week I'm going to go forward and I'm going to work on a journaling process for myself with my art, to put insights and ideas and color combinations and what I'm really enjoying this week. Because one, I'm really excited to be able to look back on that and see how my art process developed over this year. The second thing I'm going to try is the smaller faces and repetitively improving on an angle. So if I'm trying an angle like this, it's a lot easier to do 1 minute sketches or 2 minute sketches, and building that muscle memory in your hand of what a face looks like at that angle than it is to do even something this size or these larger ones. Larger ones take time. And right now, you're just trying to train yourself as to what does a face look like in that position? How can I make it, if you're going for realistic, I need to work on the side views. So what does that mean? What can I really have trouble with the angles of the face and figuring out how much of the face should be showing or not showing. It's not going to be stellar art. It's not meant to be. It's meant to show me what I don't know. And in college, that was the best advice I received from my tutor is don't focus on what you know, because you already know that. You already have that knowledge in your head. So if you have that knowledge in your head, why are you studying things you already know that you can remember? Study what you don't know. So I would make a list of everything I knew about that subject. So let's say it was chemistry and we were having a chemistry test in a few days. I would write down everything I knew quickly. And then I'd look at my test guide or whatever, and then I would only focus on what I didn't know for the test. And my test scores improved. So it's that same approach. Yeah, I can make a face and I can do it, but what face in what position don't I know? And start doing these small sketches of those face positions until I feel like I've got a feel of that in my hand and mind are connected. And then start making bigger pictures with that face. That's what I'm going to try. If you want to try it, feel free to join me. And we'll revisit all these little pages next week. I know it's a longer video. I'm just having a blast talking to you about my process, what I'm learning, and feel free to fast forward, slow down. I hope, that you find something helpful here. If you have, let me know, comment below if you have questions or thoughts, what works for you, what doesn't. I'm going to get to some more creating. I thank you for watching and I appreciate you. We'll talk more next week about what I've learned. And as I said, I think this week I'm still going to do larger things because I'm really liking this color. So I'm going to at least spend another week focusing on it because it feels like the right direction for me. And that's, I guess, how you will know things is what do you feel about it. I don't feel like moving on. But I can't say like by Wednesday or Thursday, I'll be like, oh, I want to try something else. But I can still keep doing the thing that feels right and then try something new. Just because I'm focusing on faces and maybe on colored faces as my area doesn't mean I'm not going to work on building my facial skills. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to try a few in ink just to try it. I like pencil because it's very forgiving. Color pencil is pretty darn forgiving. I have a red mark here that I didn't want, but it's okay. I can make it into a necklace. So I'm going to still work on things. I'm still going to, I may just Thursday decide I'm going to do a page full of inked faces. But my greatest focus is probably going to be on more color images or even just a single color image. So expect to see that next week. Expect to see some more smaller focus attempts. We'll see how that works and see how things improve using those two things and journaling my process. I probably won't share necessarily close-ups of that journal that I have on the side for mark making and thoughts. But I will kind of show you enough of it so you get an idea of what I'm doing if you want to do something similar. All right, I'm Ari. This is Shamelessly Creative, and I'm shamelessly making some pretty bad faces, but I'm learning, and I'm learning what works, and I'm learning what doesn't. That's hopefully the takeaway this video is giving you is show up, put some marks on the paper, even if they're just circles, if you're doing faces. Maybe it's a tree and you're just like, well, I know it has some branches and that's all you do. And it does have some branches going this way. Is you're just learning the language. You're teaching yourself the language of tree. You're teaching yourself the language of face. It's just like learning any other language. It's like I'm learning Korean, and I had to learn the Korean alphabet, the sounds of it. With art, you're learning the what's an outline of a tree look like, and how does the branch come off that tree? Well, gosh, isn't it like it's kind of that same can principle? They're curved, but how do I make that look realistic and not? I struggle with trees, so this is me figuring it out. It's like, well, some of the branches kind of go off in different directions. I'm learning the language of tree. I'm saying, well, what? See, I always end up with these weird branches, but I don't know language of tree yet, but I am willing to learn because I love trees. Are trees important to me right now? No. Do I want to learn them? Yes. Faces right now are important to me. And so I'm learning the language of faces until my hand and my mind can work together to form faces. All of these were out of my mind. And they're more cartoon style, but I like that. I love being able to do a face that looks really more human. I love seeing different people's faces and the beauty that's in the faces. But then I'm translating that into my style, into what is appealing to me, proportions. And so I'm learning face language to put that into a face that is my style. And so that's all this is learning the alphabet of face. It's like, what does face language look like? Where can I place ears? Because maybe I want to place an ear up here because it's a creature. Maybe I want to place the ears down here to make a wider face. That's what these little thumbnails are teaching you is, well, let's try an ear here. What does that look like? Well, now maybe that can be a horn, it's just teaching you placement, and then it'll just become automatic that I know that the eyes are going to go here. But what if I move them down? What if I move them up? What does that do to the proportions of the face? And that's why these little things are so handy, because you can place things and it's not a big commitment. You're not attached to this weird face. You're like, I committed 20 seconds of my life to this face. So it doesn't matter if it's bad art. And see, I know this one could become a panda. Maybe you like pandas. It becomes more of a bear. That's how characters are born, is through the experimentation of these face shapes. I hope you experiment. I hope you found something useful, and I'm going to have a lot of editing to do. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. I'm Ari. This is Shamelessly Creative. Go get creative. Bye.